It's Cheer.
And this is Loathing.
We're here to talk to you about movies.
She loves everything. I hate everything.
This should be fun.
This is a Morbidly Beautiful podcast.
Hello again and welcome to another episode of Cheer and Loathing, featuring myself, Casey, as Loathing, and over there that we have Stephanie as Cheer. Say
Hello.
hi, Stephanie. Hello.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie. And we also have something else going on today. Stephanie, you want to kind of fill us in what else is happening on this episode?
Well, I do, but before we get to that, let's just briefly talk about what this episode is going to be about.
Okay.
Before we talk about our little special edition.
Oh, okay.
So we are... I'm incredibly nervous for this episode because this is our WTF episode where we're going to talk about experimental horror. And we are, of course, going to talk about the surprise Shudder hit SKINAMARINK. And then we're going to talk about a movie that's going around the festival circuit now called RAZZENNEST that you probably haven't heard of, but it ties in really nicely to this theme. And I don't yet know what Casey thinks of SKINAMARINK, although I have a pretty good idea just knowing Casey. And knowing what I know about him, I think this could be a really kind of fun, contentious episode. But because I was a little afraid of how much abuse I was going to take for this one, decided to bring on a special guest to help maybe referee this blood battle that's probably going to go on. And that special guest is Jamie Marino, and I'm just going to introduce him real fast, and then he can jump in and introduce himself. But Jamie has been a horror movie fan since grade school. His horror movie library currently stands at over 4,000 titles. Woo, brag much? He graduated with honors at King's College with a degree in literature and creative writing, as well as double majoring in philosophy. He's been contributing to Morbidly Beautiful since its inception, and he's currently creating a reaction and review show for the Morbidly Beautiful YouTube channel. So welcome, Jamie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Stephanie.
You're allowed to speak now.
Hi, Casey.
Hello.
What do you mean brag much? What is the purpose of a biography?
Well, I just think it's hilarious. You're like, I have over 4,000 movie titles. It's like, ooh, do you now?
Yeah, you probably have 3 times as much, I'm sure.
I do, but I don't brag about it, That's the difference.
I mean, to be fair, we all have access to the internet, so I mean, all of our libraries of horror movies can be infinite.
Yes, but Jamie and I are physical media snobs, so...
Yes, we're physicals. We're collectors. We're the people that spend $50 on a CD or a DVD and watch it once and then file it away and never think about it again.
Yeah. In other words, we're the pretentious assholes that Casey hates, and so many other people like Casey, so... Yeah.
You kind of nailed the nail on the head there.
I know.
All right.
Okay.
So, you wanted to start with SKINAMARINK, correct?
I do.
Okay.
I do, because... And let me say one of the reasons... So before we get started, I'm going to give a little bit of an intro. One of the reasons that we invited Jamie on the show is because... Jamie reached out to me, and he said, hey, I have a lot of thoughts about SKINAMARINK, and I really want to do a review on the site. Is that okay? And I was like, absolutely, but coincidentally, Casey and I are planning to record and talk about SKINAMARINK, and I think it'd be really fun if you come back on the show. You've been a guest once before. If you come back on, if you have a lot of thoughts, this would be a good one for you to come talk about them. And so Jamie kindly agreed to do that. And Casey, you and I haven't discussed, as per our normal guidelines, we haven't really discussed our thoughts on this, although I think you did sort of mention that you had started the film and you weren't sure if you were going to finish it, and my only request was that you absolutely finish it, no matter how painful and difficult it was for you to do so, that you had to get through the end.
Yes.
Even if after the first 10 minutes it felt like you'd seen the whole film.
I'll tell you one thing. It was slightly easier to watch than Repo.
Oh, God. Oh, every episode you have to find a way to bring up Repo, and it's
I got it every single time.
How can you
It's
dump on
awful.
Repo? What a
Oh,
unique,
so easily.
what a colorful, unique, like I've never seen anything like Repo
Yeah, but
before
I mean,
or
like,
since.
My, sometimes diarrhea is colorful and unique too. Doesn't make it good.
God. I know we don't edit the show, but maybe we should consider doing a little editing on this one. Oh my God.
No, that's a grade A joke and it's staying in.
Okay.
Just my fascination with Blind Mange alone makes me enjoy that movie when I watch it.
Yeah, I think it's a masterpiece.
Well, you think everything is a masterpiece. We've
No.
gone over this.
I know, but if you guys haven't heard our episodes on Repo, I say episodes. We had one, and then I think we revisit it.
It
We
carries
revisited
over.
it once before, and then
No, didn't we do it
talked about
twice
all the
because I
time.
turned it off and then you're like,
Yeah.
you have to watch it and do the full review on it?
Yeah, our
Yeah.
first proper episode, you confessed that was where my hatred for you really started. Where you
Mhm.
confessed that you didn't actually watch the film, but
I
you
watched-
hated it with a fiery passion.
Yeah, I watched enough of it to get an idea of how much I hated it. Yeah.
And then I made you rewatch live on the show. We did like a little fun live recording.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
that's
fun,
right.
Fun
I
in air
forgot
quotes,
about that.
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
Yeah, where
well.
I made you watch it while we talked about it in real time, and it didn't go any better. But
No, it didn't.
at least I felt vindicated that you had to watch the whole film.
Yeah, well,
And-
it was my punishment, I guess.
And this one I knew. See, the thing with SKINAMARINK is that, yeah, I mean, it's inherently polarizing. And if you start off, like, if you're 10, 15 minutes in and you're like, fuck this shit, the experience really doesn't change for you as it goes along. Like, if you've resigned yourself to the fact that it is not for you early on, then, it's problematic because it pretty much is the same film throughout. But this is one of those where I have an infinite amount of things to say about it and trouble figuring out exactly where to start. But let's start with some overall impressions. And Jamie, you being the guest, I think you should go first.
Okay. Well, I'm one of the lucky ones that actually gets scared in horror movies occasionally. And this one kind of freaked me out simply because of the atmosphere. It was a movie that that has never been done before. It's like a found footage format, but it's not. But it's like a stream of consciousness. I mean, I don't even want to call it a non-linear horror movie because there's no line to follow. It's just, how long was it? Like 80 minutes, 90 minutes of experience.
I think it
You
was
didn't watch
solid
SKINAMARINK,
hours,
you
wasn't
just
it?
experienced it, you witnessed it. But I was scared and very nervous during this movie because I had no idea what was going to happen. Although it was slow and it was quiet, that's what made me nervous because I was like, okay, this is so nutty. There is such an opportunity for twistedness. Like, when is it going to come? When is it going to happen? And as far as fear and suspense goes, I was actually at the mercy of the movie because I was like, what are you going to do to me? But here's where I think a lot of the criticism comes in. It didn't do anything, except for there was like a jump scare at the very end. How much spoiling should I do?
Spoil away.
Well, we can spoil, but let's talk about the ending in detail here in a minute because there's a lot to unpack there. But yeah,
Okay.
You can spoil it.
Okay. I've heard different interpretations of what this is. There's a brief snippet of a phone conversation.
Hold that thought too, because I think we're going to talk about. I want to do overall impressions first, and then we are going to talk about what is this movie really about.
Well, do you not want me to talk about it, or
No, I do. I just want you to hold that thought until we get into that. I want you to start because I
She
do
just
want
wants
to talk about.
she wants you to say if you liked it.
Okay, I
I just
liked
want you
it.
to tell me your general thoughts. Like, generally speaking, did you have a good experience with this film? And
Absolutely. Yes,
Okay,
I
awesome.
liked it. It was unique. I'm glad I saw it. I don't think I'd buy it or ever see it again simply because the reactions and the sensations that the movie causes, once you've had them and you get it and you're like, okay, I got SKINAMARINK. I don't really...
Yeah.
I almost really don't want to ruin the experience by seeing it again. You know?
So I'm going to jump, Casey, I'm not trying to put you last, but I'm going to jump in there because I want to piggyback off of that, and then I want to get to your thoughts.
You do you.
I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Me too.
Well, excited, air quotes, but yes.
Yeah.
So to your point, Jamie, it's interesting that you say that because that was one of the things I was going to bring up. So it's not a surprise. I also really enjoyed this film. I loved how different it was and how surprising and how it felt like, even though it has a lot of elements that feel familiar, it felt like something that I hadn't seen or experienced before.
Yeah.
When I first watched this film, I went in pretty blind. I really did not know what to expect. And I wrote a review on this, and I think this is a film that's hard to review because on one hand, I think not knowing what to expect is problematic because part of the reason I think a lot of people have adverse reactions is because they're expecting a traditional kind of narrative, a certain type of film, and when they watch it, they're like, exactly like the theme of this film, they're like, what the fuck? Like, what am I watching? What is happening? Why is nothing happening? What is this experience supposed to be? And I think that's challenging. But then obviously if you know too much, it sort of takes away the surprise of the film and watching it and having this experience that you're not expecting to have, which is part of the unsettling nature and part of, for me, what made it so sort of horrifying.
Yeah.
But I did rewatch this film
Okay.
for this podcast. And I
I'm
will
so
say
sorry.
shut up, both of you. I'm speaking now. I
Spoiler
will
alert.
say, for me personally, a lot of horror films, I do think once you've watched them and you've had the experience, it's not that you can't rewatch them, but they certainly lose something. They lose some of the effectiveness once you sort of know the beats and you know what to expect and you know what the surprises are. For me, this is a film that I think is better on a rewatch because I think the first time you watch it, it's so disorienting and disarming that so much of the film you're watching it just trying to be like, what am I even watching? And trying to process that. And once you know what you're watching and you understand what the film is about, then if you go back and rewatch it and you try to then, when I went back and rewatched it, I tried to really think about, and this is why, Jamie, I said to hold that thought because I want to get into this. I tried to really think about, what is this film about? What's it trying to say? What's it potentially metaphor for? Casey hates that word because he hates when we talk about that. But is there something else going on here other than what's at the surface? And when I rewatched it with that sort of lens, I had a much richer, deeper experience with this film, and it was more terrifying than it was the first time for me personally. So before we get into that and the why of that, Casey, I'm going to kick it over to you, and I want to talk about your first experience watching this film.
Okay, cool. So I actually have like a little little script almost written out here for about what I think of this movie. Okay.
No.
So bear with me. It's gonna be about like a minute. Okay. So
All right.
It starts. SKINAMARINK. It's almost like the director started making the movie while he was in the early stages of dementia. He was like, I'm gonna make a movie, and his friend was like, cool. What's it about? And he's like, what's what about? Your movie. What movie? The one you want to make. I want to make a movie. Cool. Picks up a camera, puts it down, turns it on, forgets about it. Sometime later, his friend comes by again. So, how's your movie going? What movie? They go through the whole thing again. The scene changes when somebody moves the camera because it's in the middle of the fucking floor. His nurse, his wife, whatever, comes over and just sort of moves it out of the way. His kids asking about dad and stuff, that's not acting. That's legit kids being concerned about the mental health of their father. Door's missing. That's just dad having a seizure again. Sorry, Susie. That's my experience with this film.
You're taking the creative, unique, and challenging elements, and you're warping them. You're mutating them into punchlines. First of all,
That's my job on this podcast.
okay. It's just your complaints. Well, that's the thing. Your complaints, if you want to call them that, are valid. But the things you bring up, I did not see as speed bumps or faults. I saw them as things that made the movie more appealing. There's Casey. There's
Wow.
thousands. There's what? What's the matter?
No, nothing.
no.
No. She's digging this.
This is fun.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
loving it.
no.
It's great. Great time. Keep going.
There's thousands upon thousands of horror movies that have been made. Maybe even, I don't know, maybe a couple million since the invention of their photo camera, motion pictures. Wouldn't you be generous enough to please allow us, the actual people who watch with our brains as well as our eyes, enjoy a couple of movies once in a while that don't pander to common sense and linear storytelling, and like whenever I watch a movie, I'm fat. I like to eat, and like whenever I watch a new movie, I'm like, oh, popcorn chips, wow. SKINAMARINK, I was like, nah. I want to sit here. I want the movie to own me. I don't want anywhere else. I don't want to be anywhere else but inside that TV screen. And anyway, yeah, I'm going off on a tangent. So no, Casey, I agree with your criticisms, but I don't think that they were bad things. And I think you're exaggerating a little to express how much you did in fact not like this movie.
Well, listen, Jamie, you're putting me in a very uncomfortable situation where I have to defend Casey, which is not ever where I want to be.
Oh boy,
Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
No, listen, I agree with you, Jamie, that I think that this film is pretty special, and it resonated with me quite a bit. But I also do think that it is one of those films that is, as I mentioned, inherently polarizing. And I'm not going to sit here and say anyone who didn't get this film or didn't appreciate it is stupid or, wrong or whatever. Like, I think even when I was writing this review, I was like, listen, like, there's a lot of challenging things in this film that make it very hard for the average moviegoer to really latch onto and get the full experience, especially if you don't know what to expect, especially if you are not familiar with this type of experimental horror and this isn't something that is in your wheelhouse. Like, it's a hard film to watch, and I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not a true and fair assessment.
You're right.
But I do think it is definitely one of those films that, and this is why it's hard, because it's like if you don't get sucked in and invested early on, you're pretty much screwed. And it's a film that if you do not watch it with your full attention, like you mentioned, Jamie, and if you do not like commit to investing in this film, you won't get it. You will be lost. You will be incredibly bored. You will think that this is pretty much garbage filmmaking. You have really got to give into the experience fully, because otherwise, if you don't immerse yourself, it doesn't work. That's the only way this film works on any level. And that's hard to do if you're not, like, if this isn't in your wheelhouse and this isn't something that you're willing to commit to, it's very difficult. So I get where Casey and people like Casey are coming from with this film. It's difficult, but I think if you are able to say, all right, I'm all in, I'm going to have this experience, then it can be a really investing and pretty horrifying experience.
So in other words, Jamie, don't call people stupid because they didn't like SKINAMARINK.
Well, because
I get
Stephanie
in
has
trouble all
said
the time on
similar
this show.
things in the past about liking, like blockbuster movies or something like that. Stephanie's basically called the average moviegoer an idiot on more than one occasion.
I like blockbusters too. I can like SKINAMARINK too, can't I?
Me too. Casey's taking my words out of context, but I do.
No.
I think there's two things happening sometimes. Like, one, I think it's fair to say, yeah, this experience didn't resonate with me. It's not my kind of film. On the other hand, I think it's fair to where I argue is people that have that experience that are like, this isn't for me, and they extrapolate that and say, therefore, this film is a pile of shit. That's where I get upset.
Yes.
I get upset at that extrapolation, and that's what Casey takes out of context.
Yes.
So
Casey, you speak. We interrupted you. You keep going.
it's okay. It's okay. I appreciate the defense, and I'm gonna completely ruin that because you're gonna hate the next thing I'm about to say.
Yay.
This is something that you get on my ass for a lot when I say this.
You're welcome.
How am I gonna put this so I don't get chewed out by two people at the same time? So you both say unique filmmaking. It's interesting. It's different. I, on the other hand, say lazy.
You call SKINAMARINK lazy?
I call SKINAMARINK
Okay.
one of the laziest movies I've seen in a long time.
Okay. I would love to know why. I would like to know your logical explanation as to why you think it's lazy. You do like horror movies, correct?
I do enjoy
You
horror
gotta
movies.
let him speak, Jamie. You gotta let him tell you why.
Sorry,
So-
I'm really hyper today.
I can tell
I
you
know.
why, and this is from experience, I would say.
Okay.
So it's hard to obviously I don't know what the director was going through. I obviously don't know what his idea for this movie was, and there's obviously budgetary and other limitations involved. And I appreciate, and I've gone over this before, I appreciate when independent filmmakers work within their means. Last episode we talked about the alpha test, where they had a story that was well beyond what they could physically do with the budget and the restraints they had, and it made the movie worse for it. So I appreciate what SKINAMARINK is doing here with their lack of resources or whatever the case might be. However, if I were to make a movie like this, in a personal experience, this is exactly what I would do. And I would fully admit it's fucking lazy. You put the camera on the ground and you walk away. That's all they did. In an hour and 40 minutes, the fucking scenes changed like 8 times. The film grain filter that they put over it just was on repeat. I watched the same spot on the screen, and the same little black spot popped up about 400 times. It wasn't like a legit, at least I don't think it was a legit thing, and it took away the experience from me because it just felt fake. That whole like the grain filter, and then just putting the camera on the ground, and then having a kid in the background just kind of talk. It's like, yeah, kids are creepy. Next cliche, please. Like, what else are you gonna do? Dark corner. Ooh, closet moving on its own. Wonderful. Why is this? This isn't unique.
The movie was, if you want to call it a story, that whole movie was presented and told from the perspective of a child. That's why everything looked very tall, and everything was sort of shot from the floor.
That's fine, but last time I checked, kids weren't 6 inches tall, and they move around a lot too. So if you're gonna do it as a kid's perspective, have it as a kid's perspective. Don't have it as a mouse's perspective.
Well, there's where this thing called style comes in.
Or lack
And
thereof.
imagination, creativity.
Mm-hmm. Again, putting a camera on the ground isn't necessarily creative or stylized. It's
Very true. But if it's a thing you want to do along with the special digital film grain effect, if these are things you want to do to express yourself and make a movie that you want to make, I'm totally sounding like an anal film nerd now. I'm trying to figure out a better way to put this. If you're making a movie, it's like most of the time it's like you're an artist. You want to, it's an artistic, it's a form of creative expression. And you should, be allowed. That's not the right phrase, but it's the only one I'm going to think of now. Be allowed. You should be allowed to do what you want to make your art piece
I
and
agree.
put it out there. And people should say, like, okay, not many people get it or like it, but I don't know. Go on. Talk.
So let me say something. Here's one of the things, the way that I sort of reviewed this film. I think the reason why this film is, again, I keep using this word, but polarizing, is because it's not really meant to be viewed as a narrative. Like, I'm going to watch a story that has a beginning, middle, and end, and I'm going to follow this journey, and I'm going to invest in these characters. It's not that. What it is it's meant to be an experience. It's meant to immerse you in the feeling of terror, and the feeling of terror, like through the eyes of a child, of like how horrifying that would be if suddenly this space that is supposed to be like a safe space, that is supposed to be where you are protected and nurtured and cared for, and we're going to get into that later, but where ostensibly is supposed to be a safe haven, suddenly becomes something that is no longer familiar. All the things that felt familiar are now distorted. You're completely alone. You're surrounded by, and it's that old cliche of like, the scariest thing isn't what you see, but what you don't see and what you imagine. That's what this film is all about. It is about the experience of that sort of waking nightmare of like, what the fuck is going on, and as an audience member, you're supposed to feel that. You're supposed to feel completely disoriented, completely like unsure of what's happening, not quite clear about what you're watching, what you're experiencing. It's supposed to feel that repetitive nature is intentional because it's supposed to feel like you can't escape, and things are just keep happening, and little things keep changing, and it keeps getting more and more distorted, and you keep getting further and further away from reality, or what you have been grounded in reality up until this point. Things are not what they seem, and the children are trying to kind of figure out what's happening. You as an audience member is trying to figure out what's happening. So that is why I said you have to immerse yourself in this for it to have any sort of resonance whatsoever, because it isn't a narrative, it's an experience. And if you view it like that, I think they did an exceptional job creating that experience and putting you in that space and trying to, if you can let your imagination go with it, trying to imagine what that would be like, especially as a young child. I'm pausing there. Casey, thoughts?
Oh, okay.
Pausing for dramatic effect.
Well, you guys were so polite and quiet and let me just ramble, so I
Yeah,
needed to
well,
just
I
let
mean-
you know that I was done.
Well, I'm quiet because I agree. So
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with anything you're saying. I can disagree with the execution is my biggest complaint. I understand what they were trying to do. Don't get me wrong. I know I come off as kind of an idiot, and if it's not big and shiny and has slow-mo in it, I don't like it. That's not necessarily the
I disagree
case.
there because I love big and shiny. I don't think that makes you an idiot.
I appreciate that.
Well,
He
I'm
doesn't think
just
that
saying.
makes you an idiot. There's lots of other stuff he does that makes you an idiot, but not that particularly.
Fair.
Okay.
Keep going, Casey. I'm sorry.
No, it's just, and this is a lot. I'm gonna go off on a little bit of a tangent, but I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
save this for the end of the show after we cover RAZZENNEST or whatever the hell you say.
I was gonna just say, are you stupid? It's RAZZENNEST. RAZZENNEST. RAZZENNEST.
But it's the problem I have with like art house in general.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where we've gone over. It's the wine snob who's like, yes, this was aged in a fine oak barrel for 14,000 years. Realized it came off the shelf at a fucking wine rack like 3 days ago at a supermarket. Like it's one of those, like, it's dressed up in a different way, so it comes off with a different attitude. It's no different than all the goth people standing around a bar being like, we don't conform to society's standards, when they're all dressed the same. Or it's the girl in high school is like, I play video games, I'm not like other girls, when they're holding up like an Xbox controller and they're like, I can't wait to play PlayStation later. It's just like, it's there's
Casey,
trying
did you
too
just-
hard to be
Did you just
different.
insult goths and gamers at the same time? Because
I
feel
insulted
like-
people who have a higher thought of themselves than over anybody else, and that's where
Alright.
what I get from the art house horror scene is just that. It's nothing. It's a little different, but it doesn't make it better. But they think it makes it better because it's a little different, and it doesn't always translate. That's
So let me
like
ask
the
you
art
this,
house thing.
Casey.
Yeah.
Before we get into something that I'm pretty dying to talk about with this film, I'm going to ask you this question. I've asked you before on the show when you're like, it's, kind of bullshit, and it's all just pretentious nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, in your personal opinion, is resonating so much with audience? Because this film is not a film that you would expect to get a mainstream release, and to not only get a mainstream release but be successful in theaters. But it
Is
did,
it successful in
and it
has. I don't know.
has.
I haven't really
Yeah.
followed the box office on it.
I mean, yeah,
It is, yeah.
for what it is, and for certainly for the budget, and for all that, it's pretty successful. So, and it's Shudder backed IFC, like it's got
Yeah, but I mean,
It's got some
Shudder backs a lot
cred.
of like terrible shit
All right.
too. So
okay. But my point is, like, it's getting a lot of buzz. It's generating a lot of excitement. It's getting, people are talking about it. What do you think? If I was just gonna like agree with your proposition that it's really just different for the sake of being different, and it's lazy, and it's not interesting, and all of that, like, so what is it about this film that's making it rise above anything else that would kind of fall into that category of like derivative or uninteresting or uninspired?
Well, it hasn't really resonated all that well with audiences because if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a 44%, so that's not super great for one. Secondly,
Is that critic or audience or both?
That's audience.
What's a critic?
Critic 71. So it's not even that great critic-wise either. It's as Nathaniel put it, perfectly acceptable shit.
I'm gonna yell at Nathaniel.
I love that
he's
phrase so
quoting him,
fucking much. Oh my god.
and it makes me so angry every time.
But to answer your question,
I cringed. Like it just like kicked me in the balls or something.
Yeah, I
Perfectly-
did too, and he uses it all the time too, and
That's
I'm like,
good.
Nathaniel, god damn it, why would you ever say that? It's like our catchphrase now.
yeah,
and
that's
it's very
that's
upsetting.
Nathaniel from Adventures in Movies.
Yeah,
Okay.
who's a
podcast,
great
yeah.
guy, and
Yeah.
you know, I
Yeah,
really
that was a
respect
big
him, but
takeaway
that
from that,
phrase
yeah.
pissed me off a lot.
But yes, to answer your question, why it's getting so much buzz, it's the same reason I think Blair Witch sort of did. It caught attention because, yes, it is different. But again, like I said, different doesn't always make it good. People go see things because they hear things. So there was, you know, especially in the horror world, there was buzz about this movie. Oh, it's different, it's unique. And the fact that it leaked early, that it wasn't really meant to be released the way it was, people are like, oh, now I kind of have to see this. Whereas if this just kind of did the festival circuit and then, you know, didn't get the leak footage or the leaked release on YouTube or wherever it came out originally, I don't think it would have. I don't think anybody would have cared, to be completely honest. If it didn't have the happenstance and the circumstance around what happened, I don't think anybody would give a shit about it. It would have just been another like lost footage or found footage style, a little bit different than the mainstream stuff kind of release.
It's funny. So I'm going to say one thing, and then Jamie, I want you to chime in here too. But it's funny that you mentioned Blair Witch because I actually included that in my review. Blair Witch for me, for the longest time, has been sort of a litmus test, really, for what kind of moviegoer I'm interacting with and how they interpret film.
Mm-hmm.
When, you know, we talk about their experience with Blair Witch and whether they thought it was boring and stupid or the most terrifying film they'd ever seen. And it was, again, another polarizing film where it was pretty, you were kind of in one camp or the other. There wasn't a lot of like, I don't know, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. It was either, what the fuck is everybody talking about? Why is this film so hyped? It's so boring, nothing happens. There was a lot of that. And then there was a lot of like, it was just, you know, the most unsettling, horrifying thing I've ever seen, and it fucked me up, and it's brilliant, and all of that stuff. And I think the differentiator there is because it is a film very much like SKINAMARINK, where it is not about what they are showing you. It is about the feeling that they are trying to evoke. They are trying to put you in a situation where, what would it feel like if you were lost in the woods and this creepy shit started happening and you didn't know what the fuck was going to happen and where you were and you felt completely disoriented. If you can put yourself in that situation and you can imagine it and you can let that sort of fear seep in and channel it, I think that movie is absolutely horrifying. And it's horrifying without really showing you anything. I mean, everything that you experience in that film is through your own imagination, really. And SKINAMARINK is very, very similar in that nature, which is why, and I'm not saying people who don't get it are stupid. I'm saying that it just depends on how you engage with films and how you can, your ability to really put yourself in that situation and let yourself kind of channel that fear, as opposed to having that fear be shown to you or presented to you in a very outward fashion. And so in a way, like, I feel this film is not Blair Witch. I mean, it's very different, but it has that same sort of sensibility that I think is where, if you're kind of trying to decide, well, is this a film I'd like or not, that's a good baseline. Like, how did you experience Blair Witch? Did it freak you out? Was it terrifying, or was it boring as hell? If you answer the latter, you're not going to like SKINAMARINK. There's just not a good chance of you enjoying this film.
See, I really like Blair Witch.
Okay, well,
So,
and did it scare you? Did you think it was terrifing?
I mean, I saw
or
it
you
when
just
I was
think it was
like,
interesting?
I saw it when I was like 12 for the first time. So I mean, yeah, it scared the shit out of me because I was like 12. But it was also different in the sense of it started, like, I'm sure there was found footage shit before that, but that was the one that really like kicked it off into the popular culture, I guess you could say. So it had that kind of allure, and it's almost like every found footage movie after that has just been trying to emulate the Blair Witch Project, and this is no exception.
Okay, may I step in there for a second?
Yes, please.
If you choose to make a found footage movie, now, okay, let me clarify first of all. I don't think SKINAMARINK is a found footage movie. Looks like it is. It was sort of sold, previewed like it is too, but I don't think it is. Anyway, if you're going to make a found footage movie, how else do you make a found footage movie besides making it look like a normal everyday person shot it and the footage was later found? You know, that's...
I actually have an answer to that. Cloverfield.
What about that?
That did not feel like a found footage movie, even though it was.
Because millions of dollars were poured into it.
That's fine. It made it stand out or stand separate from, say, Blair Witch, for example. And that's a key. And I mean, there was obviously a lot of production gone into that movie. And whereas traditionally found footage is, bare bones, no budget, somebody found a camera in their attic and they decided, let's make a fucking movie with it. Totally fine. But I'm just saying you can separate. You can make a found footage movie that isn't always going to be compared to Blair Witch. That's all I'm saying to that.
Okay, so I want to change topics, and I want to talk about something that has definitely been on my mind with SKINAMARINK, given my recent rewatch. So I told you guys that I watched it once, and I had one experience with it, and it was definitely a terrifying experience. And the way that I watched it originally was how I thought it was intended, which was really just that this is really a waking nightmare. This is the idea of, being young and being afraid of the dark and being afraid of the sounds that you hear, not quite sure what's going on, not quite sure what's real and what's not, having a safe sort of sacred space turned upside down and turned into something that you were no longer sure about, that was suddenly threatening and terrifying. And I think it works really well at that level, like just that surface level of that sort of nightmare. But then, as I started to kind of do some research, and Casey hates this about me, but I always try to think about what is below the surface. Like, what is a film trying to say? What sort of metaphors are there? Sometimes there aren't, but a lot of times there are some, like, deeper things happening. And some of the theories that I saw posted really fucked me up. And I wanted to see, one, if you guys interpreted the film in this way at all, or what you think about it. So one of the theories that I saw is that this is a metaphor for child abuse. And there's there's a lot of hints to that when you kind of start looking at it through that lens. And so I read a little bit about it and about, where that's coming from, and that basically it has to do with, which I think I missed this when I first watched it, because again, when you first watch this film, you're kind of like, what am I watching? It takes a while for you to orient yourself to what's happening, because it is so different in so many ways. And I really missed sort of first 10 minutes where they're really setting the stage for, because there's a phone call. And Jamie, you started to allude to this, and I said, hold that thought, because I want to really get into it. So I want to get your thoughts on this. There's a phone call with the dad.
Yeah.
You never see him, you just hear him. And he's on the phone, and he says that, I think the boy's name is Ken, is that right? Kaylee
Sounds
and
familiar,
Ken,
yeah.
I believe that's correct.
Doesn't matter.
I'm gonna say Ken for the sake, you don't really ever get to know him, but the boy who you mostly just kind of
I think it's
see his
Kevin.
feet and hear him. Kevin, all right. So we'll go with Kevin.
Sure.
Because I like that better anyway. So Kevin, he says, Kevin fell down the stairs and hit his head.
Yeah.
He's okay. He doesn't even need stitches, but I'm just letting you know. And then he says, Kaylee says he was sleepwalking. And then, and that's sort of, the beginning, and then things start to get more and more fucked up.
There were numerous references to sleepwalking.
Yeah. And then, the theory is that Kevin is not okay, first of all. Either he's
Do we
dead
need to talk
or
about
he's
Kevin?
in a coma, or something is going on, and that's what, this whole experience is happening from the trauma of this fall, which it's also potentially alluded to that it's not really a fall and he wasn't really sleepwalking. He is being abused by his dad.
Okay.
Or potentially by the mom who is absent from this, but who they are suspiciously afraid, like they don't want to talk about her. There's a reference where Kaylee, the girl, is like, I don't want to talk about mom. So what's going on there? But when I rewatched it with that lens, this movie fucked me up on a whole other level. So, Jamie, you kind of alluded to, I think that you wanted to talk about this. Did you have a similar experience, or what are your thoughts on that interpretation of the film?
Well, I believe either I read the same reviews or the concept that you're talking about is one that a lot of other people share. I agree. Well, for one thing, it's a work of art, so you can really interpret it however you want. You can just, get stoned and just consider it like a movie to trip on, or what you're expressing. Yes, I agree. It was interesting. See, this is why it's such a great movie. It's such talented filmmaking. I felt uneasy. The voice on the phone, the guy on the phone, he didn't sound like a nice guy. Just his tone, the way he talked, and the apprehension in the way the kids walked, the way their feet moved around. There's just a feeling of tension, like not ghost tension, but like actual, like organic emotional tension with the characters, and it comes out. That kind of thing impresses me. And yes, I think it was sort of taking an actual quote unquote real life problem, a solid problem, abuse, and they were expressing it and showing you the after effects through the point of view of a child. How did I do with that? Like the director was thinking, okay, I'm an abused child. What do I see? What do I think? And I think that's what SKINAMARINK is. And I mean, the thing is, they mix it with actual childhood moments, like toys on the floor. Like I want to reference, probably for the first of many times, the voice upstairs. Like when we're kids, like that alone, that right there kind of explains the point and the beauty of the movie. The voice saying, come upstairs, because we've all been kids. We've all heard shit, in the dark corners of our house. I had a basement in an old house where there was a really dark corner. If I was there now, I would just walk in, whatever. But I was terrified of that corner because I always thought I heard shit. Same idea, but it's a kid thing. It's an adolescent thing. It's a young thing, and it's mixed with the very serious, very adult problem of abuse, and it's being filtered through an artist's eye. Damn it, Casey.
Yes. I am listening.
Casey went to get a snack. He's like,
yeah,
oh,
no,
I'm
I
sorry.
took a
Are you
little
guys
nap. It's
talking?
okay. We're good. Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of on a tangent now. I don't really.
No, that's fine. Have you listened to these podcasts? Half of them start is like we're talking about SKINAMARINK, and we're like Obama. Like it doesn't matter.
Thanks, Obama.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
SKINAMARINK.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Why? What is it?
No, just like we go off on topics that are completely unrelated to the film. So at least you're staying on film, which is more than we can usually say.
Well, I would like to think I'm staying on the movie.
That's what he just said, Jamie.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. Don't worry. You're doing wonderful.
No, I think that this is really interesting because this, like I said, I think viewing it, because I think it works without having to, like, Casey, I know this pisses you off. I think it works if you don't have to peel back any layers. You don't have to think about it on any deeper level. You could just think about it like, okay, that's a scary experience. And I think we all, even as adults, in the middle of the night, you hear a strange noise, you're disoriented, you're not really sure what's real. We can all relate to that level of fear on some level. And so I think it transcends a lot. But when you do look at it on, holy shit, what if this is a metaphor for these children that are being abused? It's so much more horrifying, and it's so much more fucked up, and it's so much more like, I don't know, just sort of takes my breath away. Casey, I kind of want to get your thoughts. So if you were, first of all, what do you think about that interpretation? And if you were to interpret it on that level, does it change anything for you?
So I have a love-hate relationship with theories because they're a lot of fun. Obviously, like going over, why did this character do that? He did that because in the background of scene 4, there's this thing here, and it really demonstrates that this is the theory that I come up with. Whatever, a lot of fun, but there's also the lens of if you apply the theory without the evidence in like a practical sense, if we're talking like real life, then you look for things to fulfill that theory as opposed to having the things of the evidence fulfill the theory or create the theory rather. And I mean, it could be about child abuse. I mean, the word SKINAMARINK is about a kid's song. So, I mean, it's not entirely impossible that that's what they were going for. But do I see any outward things to tangibly prove that as what's happening? No. Watching it from that sort of viewpoint, does it change the movie for me? No, not a whole lot anyway.
I think if you viewed it in a different way, you would like it, but you can't teach someone or explain to someone the right way to watch a movie. But I do think, once again, I understand what you're saying. But it just seems like you and I were sort of drinking the same liquid through different glasses. How about
so you're
that?
saying you have a real plastic straw and I have a paper straw. Mine's falling apart.
I'm saying maybe you have a pint glass and I have a shot glass. No, not a shot glass. Like a soda glass or whatever. Typical drinking glass.
Right.
Same size, different. So, yeah. Because like I said, what you're saying, okay.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. I didn't even interrupt. I was just going to say that I think that once you sort of think about that interpretation, because I know what you're saying, Casey, a lot of times we find ways to back into a theory that we have. We're like, oh, this could be, reinforcing my ideas. So that's a real phenomenon.
100% it is. That's why people get like wrongly convicted in real life, right?
But I do think if you do look at this film from that perspective, there is quite a bit of evidence that I think would support it. And we don't have to go into the details of it, and we don't have to like psychoanalyze it at this point. But I will say that like I said, rewatching it and thinking about that, and then looking for those signs and looking for how to like things like, I'll just give one where Kaylee loses her eyes and her mouth, and it is you sort of representing the like when kids who are in these abusive situations are get told like, okay, you didn't see anything, you didn't hear anything, you don't say anything. That's really reinforced. Like they have this nightmarish terror that they're living through, and they can't tell anyone, they can't say anything because they're so afraid, and what that feels like to be silenced. And there's a lot of references, like I said, to what's going on with the mom, and the fact that they never really call out for their mom, like when they're terrified. And except at the very, very end, at the end, which we can get into if we want to, because the end is kind of really fucked up. There at the very end, there's right before like the last where it says the end. Kevin says, "Mommy," and it's after you realize like things are insanely fucked up, and
see, that was
both
chilling.
Dead and going through, Go ahead, sorry, Jamie. No,
well,
please,
no,
go
just
ahead.
that kind of lends to my idea that there's just a level of discomfort in this movie, and it's a result of filmmaking talent. Because just the way Mommy was said, just the whole presentation of it, the editing of it, everything, just made it sickening. I was nervous with this movie. I was maybe a tiny bit nauseous with this movie, and you're right. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place here. The movie was very what's the word? Discomforting, disturbing, disorienting. Yeah, and yeah, Mommy is part of that. They take this discombobulating.
Okay, enough with the $10 words.
I thought we were just coming up with diss words, and I was trying to come up with the best one.
Don't diss me. I had to do it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's okay. We were all thinking it.
Oh, I just had something. See, now that's what makes this movie special, because we're talking about abuse and children and the trauma that children experience, and the movie is expressing this and presenting this, but it's pureed in ingredients of classic horror movie fear. Horror movie like Young Fear, like the dark, the funny sounds, the whispering, the little like whispery noises, the come upstairs stuff. Like that's all raw nerve, hardcore. Mommy, I'm afraid of the dark. I'm scared. Like crawl in your bed in the middle of the night. Mommy, I have a nightmare. Like that kind of stuff. So it's interesting that they're mixing those two things in such an abstract way, yet it still comes across. Yeah. It's not this movie. Okay, whoever made this movie, they didn't want to say, all right, I want to make something real entertaining and people are going to have fun with it. No, I don't think this movie is intended to be enjoyable or fun. It's, once again, I hate that Casey doesn't like this word. It's art. Filmmaking is an art. This is a movie that wasn't made to enjoy. It was a movie made to show you an artist had a thought or an idea, and he wanted to show it, and he wanted to express it and give it to the people, and that's what he did. He didn't really care about probably any of our opinions, really, but this isn't. I'm just gonna derail my own. I'll tell you one thing. I guarantee we deserve, all three of us. We deserve something here. Stephanie, you deserve something. Cheer and Loathing, Morbidly Beautiful. This is probably the only serious conversation about this movie that is available on the internet right now, because everybody's just fuck that. It sucks. Nothing happens. Oh, bullshit. Oh, trash. At least we're.
Well, I'll take the compliment. First of all, I don't know that we're the only serious conversation, and second of all, I have never heard Cheer and Loathing being accused of having serious conversations.
I know, right?
So that's interesting, but yeah, I'll take it. Like it is. I mean, I am glad that
you have to admit that it's rare.
Well, yeah. I mean, I like that. Even like I said, we usually don't have a guest. It's usually just me and Casey, and we usually are just arguing because we have very different perspectives and different ways of experiencing these films. Even when we just fight about it and we like beat each other up, like I love the fact that we're talking about these films that are different and do give us a lot of fodder to really think about. And I think personally, like I love films that are divisive in this way. My favorite kind of films are the films that I watch, and I watch knowing damn well that more than half the audience is going to be like, what the fuck? Like, that's awesome to me. But, like I am a certain type of moviegoer with a certain type of aesthetic and something that appeals to me that I know is not for everyone. And I appreciate that it's not for everyone. But it is fun to talk about, and it is fun to get different opinions. And this film, I think, I was going to end it. It's a great like segue to, before we go into the next film, I kind of think this is a film at the end of the day, like, it's totally fair if it's not for you. It's totally fair if you didn't get it. If you're like, yeah, I did not enjoy watching it because, like you said, Jamie, I don't even know if the point is to enjoy it, to be honest. It's not that kind of film.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
The point is to experience it, and it's an uncomfortable experience. So it's okay not to like it, but I do think that it deserves credit because it, on virtually no budget whatsoever, it did something that is at least interesting and thought-provoking and has got people talking and has got like mainstream attention in a way that these kind of films don't normally get. And even if that attention is negative, it's still, if people are talking about it, that's a good thing. And even like Casey, you said, this film's origin started with people pirating it from an online film fest and it going viral and people being like, you got to see this fucking thing. Like, what the fuck did I just watch? Please go watch it. And everybody rushing out to watch it just to see like what all the buzz is about. That's something. That's a pretty special thing in the world of film. And I think we got to give it credit for at least achieving something, whether it resonated with us or not. Casey, do you agree with that at least assumption or assessment?
Sure.
Sure.
Ah.
You shut the fuck up.
So what do you think of our abuse theories here? Did you, or now that you're hearing this, did you think back and think, oh yeah, I could sort of see where that idea comes from?
I mean, I can see it, but you know how I started this thing off with like the little dementia joke, which obviously isn't something to joke about, but you know, there was a bit of seriousness in that. I do feel if this movie has any subtext, it is about mental health more than anything. I think there's something wrong with mommy.
Yeah.
And I don't think the kids understand, and they see her as a monster.
Okay.
Because she does things
another...
like she takes the doors off the hinges because she's having an episode, or things are moved because she did it in the middle of the night when everybody's asleep and she's making noise, and she can't, and the kids are afraid of that, and they see her as a monster.
Holy fuck. That's a totally different way to interpret it, but that too fits. See, this is what I mean, man. Art.
Casey, you almost maybe inadvertently gave really even more credence to this film than I think maybe you intended by giving another really thought-provoking, interesting reading that works totally well.
Well, I mean, the main reason I see that is also the end. At least I think it's near the end, when they're just showing like somebody sitting on the edge of the bed. I think it's the mom. For like 43 minutes straight, that one long, very long, boring shot. But, you know, you get the point. It does have the tension that doesn't lead to anything. But I'm just sitting there like, there's something wrong with her. This isn't a ghost story. This isn't a haunting. No. This is something wrong with one of the parents. And that's why the dad is like trying to protect the family by being like, hey, you know, don't talk about what mommy does, essentially, because she's fucking nuts.
But there is another interpretation where it is quote unquote just a haunted house movie,
or it could be.
Yeah,
you know. Wow.
Yeah, that could just be something paranormal happening that's super super fucked up, and the fact that it's targeting children makes it even more fucked up.
Possession. It's just this is just found footage exorcist, or not found footage exorcist.
It's not found footage. No.
Nor is it exorcist. I don't think it's either one of those, Casey, but all right.
Anyway.
Like people who called Hereditary the exorcist of the modern age or whatever.
No, the exorcist is so much better. But anyway, we're not going to get into that right now.
No, sorry.
Don't you dare.
Yeah.
Let's change gears. Let's
go to the next thing we're going to talk about today.
Go to RAZZENNEST. Which is a film that I suggested. It's something that is on the festival circuit right now. So, listeners, you won't be able to see it just yet, most of you, depending on where you are in the country or in the world. But it will be coming soon. And so we watched an early preview of it, and it's something that I really wanted to talk about for a lot of reasons. Because one, I knew we were talking about SKINAMARINK, and so we were like, what can we talk about that is sort of in that vein? So we're really looking at films that are experimental in some way. And this is definitely an experimental film, RAZZENNEST. But also because there's a lot of layers to this one as well. And one of those layers is it's very tongue-in-cheek, and there's a lot of irony because it is really an art house film that sort of pokes fun at art house films.
Yes.
And especially in the beginning, there's a lot of and we'll talk about kind of what this film is, and we'll do some setup, but there's a lot of reference to the way people view art house films and the pretentious nature of it, and our desperate need to interpret things that are probably not happening to give it subtext and meaning and to feel cultured and smart and all of those things. And it's the stuff
I felt
that Casey
attacked.
Always, yeah, I did too, in a joyful kind of way. But I thought Casey, even though he doesn't like experimental, I thought he might appreciate at least some of that was happening, just because he and I fight about that kind of stuff a lot. So let's just briefly, before we jump into it, let's briefly talk about what this film is. It's another one that's a little bit hard to talk about just because it's so unique and different. But the premise is that this filmmaker, this really pretentious art house filmmaker, has made a new film. And it is essentially, the entire film is essentially just, it really just looks like a bunch of stock photography. I mean, it's a bunch of scenic photographs, one after another. There is literally nothing happening. And in the film on RAZZENNEST, they are filming the audio commentary track for this film. And so you only hear the characters.
Yeah.
You never see them.
This
And
is the
all
audio.
you see on
yeah.
the screen, all you see on the screen is the film that they're talking about, which is really just different scenes, one scene after another after another.
So it's the first mock commentary movie.
Yeah. And it's hilarious, especially in the beginning, because the filmmaker's really funny. And so basically, it's this Rotten Tomatoes critic that's interviewing him and his producers.
It's you.
And it's and the critic is hilarious because she's very, like, you could she's just spewing off a bunch of stuff to sound intelligent.
Yeah.
And
Like you.
okay, you can stop saying that now. She gets a lot of shit wrong, and she pisses the filmmaker off because he's like, "What the fuck? You don't know what you're talking about." And she's trying to be all jovial and be like, "Oh, okay, everything's great." And he's like a real, like, kind of pain in the ass, and he's getting real angry, and it's pretty hilarious. And there's a lot of where they start talking about the deep, like, philosophical meaning of this film, where you're watching it as the audience, you're like, okay, there's literally nothing fucking happening in this film. And the filmmaker starts going off on, oh, this is about the 30 Years War, and he gets real pissed off because the interviewer doesn't know what the hell that is, and he's like, holy shit, you uncultured Americans who don't know anything about history. And the irony of this is that the real filmmaker, actually said in an interview, he was like, I actually really did want to make a film about the 30 Years War. I find it incredibly fascinating, and that was not practical. I didn't have the budget, and there's just not enough interest in that. So I found a way to be able to talk about this in the context of this, like, art house experimental film, because he does go into quite a bit of a dissertation on what the 30 Years War was and why he being the fake filmmaker made this film within a film. So there's a lot of, like, kind of subtext and meta shit happening. That's the setup for RAZZENNEST. And now let's get into the execution. I am going to stop talking. Who wants to go first with their experience with this film?
I do.
Go for it. Go for
Okay,
it.
both
Jamie,
talk.
you go.
Okay. So took me a while to find a functioning link. So I link up, and I'm okay, it's going to work. And it's just a spooky music. I was like, oh, okay, all right, cool. And then there's all these really spooky images. Because, like, it's like the movie is just like stock footage. But they're all kind of scary images. I mean, it's not just like a daisy and then a, tricycle or whatever. It's anyway.
Those could be creepy.
They could be, yeah. Then the commentary starts. And it sounds, it's professional. It sounds very, in the beginning, it ends like a fucking circus, but it starts very professional. And I was like, shit, I have to get in touch with Stephanie and let her know that somehow I got a link with the commentary on it.
I had the exact same thought. I had to go watch a trailer to make sure I had the right fucking movie.
But I kept it on just to see. And the first thing that gave it away, and once again, if this was intentional, this is brilliant filmmaking. The first thing that gave it away was that director. RAZZENNEST. Are you a stupid American? Because that accent is so fake, like mine just was. It was like so fake and so silly that it just screamed comedy. It screamed farce. So I was like, okay, this isn't serious. This is part of the movie. So now, and it took me quite a while to figure that out. A couple minutes anyway, which is quite a while. Then the second part challenge of the movie is figuring out, now how spoilery do you want me to get here?
This is a spoiler show. We
Okay.
do spoilers.
Occasionally, one of the stock photos would match what the commentators are like experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And as the movie progressed, the commentary turned into a full-on 100% creative story about a zombie outbreak. And as you're hearing the outbreak play out in the commentary studio, the same kind of, there's no zombies in the movie, but like if something crashes in the studio, like there'll be footage of like a cave crashing, or like something falling or something like that. The environment of the movie itself is always kind of reflecting the chaos that's going on in the commentary studio. And and just like SKINAMARINK, it was made, I think, to be experienced. This one is a little more made maybe to be enjoyed, and it's a little more lighthearted. Well, it is a lot more lighthearted, but I don't think I want to see it again, simply because it was like, I don't know, like a gimmick. It was like a good gimmick, and I got the joke, and it was funny, and it made me think, and it made me feel very insulted, and I did feel attacked because there were points when I actually thought, I'd watch that movie. I mean, and I would, if that was an actual movie, I'd check it out.
I feel like it's one of those movies that people like you and me, Jamie, if I'm being honest, and I'm just going to be honest here, I'm going to have a moment of transparency, Casey.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's one of those movies that we would watch because we were told it was brilliant, and because everybody was like, holy shit, this movie, like, it's just, breathtaking in its honest look at this, tragic event. And we would watch it, and I think we'd be bored out of our minds. But I think we would convince ourselves that it was brilliant because we were told it was brilliant and because it's about something really meaningful and important. And so we would force ourselves to watch probably 2 hours, maybe 2.5, I would guess, for a movie like this, almost maybe 3, of picture after picture after picture that does nothing and goes nowhere, and we would convince ourselves that it is fucking brilliant, and we would write essays about how brilliant it is. Like, I think this movie is poking fun of us in a way that is perfectly fair and legitimate, because we do tend to, I think there's films that we genuinely enjoy, and then I think there's films that we enjoy because of not because we had fun watching it, but because of like what it represents, or some deeper meaning, or some like intellectual experience,
But
we'll have an intellectual experience. Go ahead.
But there's value. There is value in that, though. I mean, there's James Patterson and Mary Higgins Clark books and V.C. Andrews books, and then there's J.G. Ballard and Harlan Ellison and Shakespeare and Dickinson. There's like different. I mean. You know what I mean? So this.
No, I mean I'm with you.
Like the defeat. Like I know what I want to say. I don't know how to say it.
I know.
But I also know that like this is a film. This fake film, RAZZENNEST, the fake film, is something I would watch, and I would write a dissertation on how brilliant it is. And somebody like Casey would be like, "This is why I can't trust any fucking thing you say, because you just watched this god awful, boring as shit movie of stock footage and talked about how brilliant it is, and it's absolute garbage."
And then the director comes out after me like, "It was a fucking joke."
But I honestly think
I'm waiting for that day. Waiting for Eggers to come out and be like, "All my movies."
No,
I'm
you keep Eggers
y'all.
out of your mouth. Keep Eggers out of your fucking mouth.
God. Anyway, yes.
But
Go ahead, Jamie. What were you gonna say?
That's good though. I mean, when you I don't want to take away the fun of all this, but when you boil it all down, we're all watching these movies, and the ones we're enjoying, we're bottom line. We're like, I want everyone to get out of this movie what I'm getting out of this movie. So I want to tell everyone how great it is, and I want to fight people who say it sucks, because I have this beautiful feeling inside me when I watch it, and I want other people to have that feeling too. And naturally, I mean, like, it's probably a basic human instinct. If someone rejects that feeling inside you, you get mad, you get insulting, you call them stupid.
Yeah, I'm used to that.
So,
okay, speaking of stupid, Casey, what do you think?
Thank you.
I want to know how it tricked you, and what part showed like where the punchline hit you.
I don't know. I can't pinpoint a spot exactly.
You have to admit you were amused by this.
No, I'm of two minds with this project. I have a hard time calling it a film because it's not. Can we just address the elephant in the room? It's not a movie. It's an audio drama with stock footage.
You're right.
Right.
Yeah.
As an audio drama, well done, really good. As a movie, which is what this whole thing is about reviewing both aspects of storytelling, the audio, the characters, and the footage. It's hard to judge on that level because it's what I feel like, and I could be completely wrong, but this is my theory on this, is this guy really wanted to do an audio drama, but there's no money in audio dramas. You can submit a film to a film festival and potentially make a shit ton of money off of it. So I feel like the stock footage aspect of it was just a straight potential for money grab, just so he could submit it, because you can't submit an audio drama to a film festival, no matter how good it is.
This is going to be a hit, I think.
Even I don't know just about for hit, but it'll make money.
Yeah,
it'll make
just
money.
Out of curiosity, people will be curious to know what it is.
Yeah,
like SKINAMARINK.
Well, also at first when Stephanie was like, "Let's do this one," I went in completely blind. I had no idea what it was about. I looked up nothing about it other than what she had told me.
From the artwork, I thought it was going to be a folk horror movie.
I thought it was going to be German. I thought I'm like, oh fuck, this is going to be like a foreign artsy fartsy film, and I'm like, you're just asking for a fight at that point. But it wasn't. The audio drama aspect of it was fine. It was well done. A little over the top, but I assume that's what they're kind of going for.
Yeah, I think so.
It was nice, like the juxtaposition between, like, right at the beginning when she's like, it's RAZZENNEST, he's like, RAZZENNEST. Yeah. Right, like, okay, yeah.
See, that's when it gave it away on me.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, even the name Babette, I'm like, okay, this ain't real.
Yeah.
But.
And his manager, like, sort of acting weird around him. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, like, when they bring in the sound guy, he's like, hey, this is your buddy here, like, doing the over-the-top radio voice.
I do want to interject one quick thing in case, and then I want to get back to you. So
sure.
I read, like, a lot of interviews about this film and the filmmaker and what he was trying to go for. And somebody asked him, they're like, listen, like, how did you, the first half is really the audio commentary portion, and then it goes off the rails where it starts becoming an actual horror movie at that point, or at least from an audio drama standpoint.
Right.
Yeah.
There's horror happening that they're talking about, let's put it that way.
Sure.
And it's partly comedic but partly horrific, and it's kind of crazy. But in the beginning, he's like, the filmmaker said that he pulled a lot of the dialogue that's used by both the critic and by the filmmaker. He pulled that directly from, like, real context, real things people had said, real interviews, real, experiences he's had and then filmmaker friends have had. So even though, you're watching, you're like, oh, this is immediately, I could tell that this wasn't real. It basically, he was saying you'd be surprised at how much of that is real. How much of that sort of, especially the stuff that is said that you're like, this is so ignorant, is like lifted from actual real dialogue. And
I bet it's
he
from
was
interviews
making a
of David
commentary on that.
Eggers.
I hate you so much, Casey. I
It
swear
has
to
to
God.
be 100%.
What? I missed that.
Casey is hating on Robert Eggers, and we have an arrangement,
whatever fucking name is. Yeah, I don't even know his name.
That he is not allowed to do that. He's not allowed to talk about.
We've never had this.
Or Robert Eggers.
Who's the other one?
Ari Aster.
Oh right, yeah.
No, Ari Aster did Midsummer and Hereditary, right?
Correct.
And Robert Eggers did Witch and Lighthouse. Okay. And you don't like Witch and Lighthouse? You had to have liked Northman.
I did.
Casey?
I didn't watch all of it.
Oh boy.
I got about halfway and I'm like,
hey, I don't want to get.
To be fair, I wasn't in the mood for it, so
yeah,
I do want to kind of give it a shot, but I don't know. He puts a bad taste in my mouth to begin with, but yeah.
Okay.
So I'd be going unbiased.
Look, Jamie, this is the thing you need about Casey. He has his opinions that are legit, but then he also knows what are my triggers.
And he
purposely goes for my triggers.
I poke them all the time.
Even whether or not he really, I don't know that he truly has the level of hate that he expresses for the things that I'm deeply passionate about. I think he just thinks it's really funny because he gets a reaction out of me every single time.
Every time.
Every time. I never learn. I'm always like,
so,
I can't just be cool.
Yeah, so what we're basically saying here is RAZZENNEST is a Robert Eggers movie that is being made fun of.
Are you one of those bullshit reverends who thinks the witch like had nothing in it and nothing happens? Are you one of those guys?
Partially. I don't think I don't hate the movie, but I also don't love the movie.
Okay.
Jamie, there's a Cheer and Loathing episode where
we did an episode
about
on
the
it,
witch, so
and I
you
didn't
should
shit
go
on it
listen
that
to
much. I didn't shit on it that much.
Okay.
I might have shit on it because you liked it, but I didn't. I wasn't like, this is the worst movie I ever saw. This wasn't a repo moment. How many times can I get that in there today?
You usually manage quite
A
well
couple
to get
times,
it in
yeah.
A few times. Yeah, I mean, I think you were just like underwhelmed.
Yeah, I
You
think that
did
was
your meh thing.
I think
which
I think I
maybe
had
upset me more.
yeah, I think I had different expectations for that movie, and they didn't hit the mark for me. But that's not what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, that's totally fine.
God
like I said,
damn it, Jamie.
these go off the rails all the. I'm surprised we haven't gone into like other movies yet.
I didn't mean to call you a bullshit reverend. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
No,
It's fine.
don't apologize. That was the best thing you said all episode. So.
Oh, was it? Oh, thank you.
So there's gonna be long periods of silence in this episode because we used to have a guest, but he's been edited out.
Oh my god, that would be. Can you imagine if you just fucking edited him out and then there's just
like,
weird,
yeah.
awkward transitions?
Well, I don't even fill the void. I don't even splice our voices together. I just leave his 30 seconds of talking periods or whatever just completely dead.
We should do an experimental version of this podcast where you do something like that.
Yeah, like RAZZENNEST kind of like.
Just release an hour and 90 minutes of silence.
If this episode posts on April 1st, I'm not going to listen because I know that's what you're going to do.
Holy shit, I didn't even think about that.
Oh no, what the hell did I just do?
Oh my god, the ideas, the wheels are spinning. Oh, okay. Back to RAZZENNEST. Where were we? Where the fuck were we?
We're making fun of Eggers and how this is probably based off his interviews.
We were not.
I was. Anyway.
I would like to eventually get to how neat it was that towards the end of the movie, the actual footage of the movie matched the chaos of the zombie apocalypse.
To an extent.
Jamie, we can get into that, but I want to talk about how passive-aggressive that transition was. You were like, I'd like to eventually get to a real discussion about this film, you fuckers.
He fits in right perfect with you.
Okay,
sorry, I'm having too much fun here.
No, it's good. That's what we're supposed to be having, a good time.
Okay.
Yes, you are absolutely right, and we can discuss that. It is interesting how at first when you're watching the visual component of this, you're like, this is just, there's nothing happening. This is just random and boring and stupid. And then as it goes on and you start to introduce the horror and it starts to go off the rails, the visuals, they still stay the same. They're still the same type of visual, but somehow they have more kinetic energy. They feel more tied in with the story. It's a really smart choice. It's really interesting.
So I have a confession.
To your point, Casey, okay, I'm going to say one thing and then I want your confession.
Okay.
To your point, you're like, well, this isn't a movie. This is just audio drama. There's no visual aspect. But I think there is a visual aspect, and I think they do utilize that in a pretty interesting and creative way.
Right, but I don't think it adds anything to the experience.
All right.
And my confession is thus, once I realized it was an audio drama, I'm like, fucking A, and I started doing other things. Because I just listened to it. I started working out. I started playing some video games. Started doing some video or photo editing. Because I didn't need to watch it, which you can't fault me for. Because I still paid attention. I still paid attention to it. I mean, there's only so many times I need to see a cave.
How much did you watch? How much did you watch?
I watched. How long was it? It was about an hour and 20 minutes. I probably watched more than half, probably 65%.
So.
And I did see, I had it on.
No. You didn't. If you didn't watch it all the way through, then you didn't get the full effect of the entire purpose
I know
of
what
the
you're
movie.
talking about. I had it on. I wasn't, like I said, I didn't turn the screen off and just listen to it. I was still in the room. I was still in front of the screen, but I wasn't paying 100% attention to the video aspect. And I saw the parts you're talking about. I know the ending where it's like the stock footage of the firefighters and shit like that. Like I saw these things, but I didn't ingest them as part of the experience because I didn't believe they needed to be part of the experience.
Casey, on one hand, I am impressed by the level of honesty and transparency you continually show. Like, you're so forthcoming, and I give you credit for that. On the other hand, why in the ever-loving hell would you confess these things to me? You know what kind of reactions you're going to get from me. You know how angry I'm going to be at you. Why don't you just keep this shit a secret and just pretend that you thought it was garbage?
Content.
I'm just like, what the? If I didn't watch this film, I guarantee you I would not be admitting that. So I guess kudos, sort of, but also what the
Did
fuck?
you say contest or content?
Content.
Tent.
So
'Cause
you
Stephanie
did it.
gets angry.
You did it intentionally, or
No, I'm telling her for the content. I did it
Yeah.
because that's how I felt this needed to be
So you
experienced.
may
and said.
actually, a lot of these movies you're watching, you may actually like and finish, but you're taking the role of Loathing just to keep the show going.
Stephanie, we have
right?
to kill him.
God damn it.
He's onto us.
I
No,
think
you're sincere. I can tell. Okay, that's kidding.
Yeah.
You are very sincere in your commentary. I'll give you that. Yes.
I think he pushes a little harder for the sake of my reaction, but I think he is definitely like. I mean, we definitely have different opinions on films. That's for sure.
Yeah,
That's why we started this
100%,
podcast in the first place, because we knew we were very different. We had very different interpretations of films and different types of films we like and different opinions. So I think it's legitimate, but he definitely likes to see me get riled up, which is why he
So
constantly references Repo and The Witch and things that he knows I'm passionate about. Yeah, Reefer.
Yeah, that movie would have been
film.
much better on that, 100%. But yeah, so I would say my experience wouldn't have changed because the first 45 minutes, first 50 minutes of the movie or so, I didn't get. I'm gonna be honest. The stock footage, the video aspect of it was actually bothering me. It was annoying. Not bothering in like the SKINAMARINK, how you guys experience it, like an uneasy. It was more like I'm getting very annoyed at this. So that's part of the reason why I checked out, because I did enjoy the audio aspect of it, and I wanted to maintain that level of experience, and I didn't need contrasting things. I wanted to visualize what they were doing, what they were talking about, but the visuals didn't do that for me.
But the visuals were probably like 30 or 40% of the whole of the joke. Of the overall
No,
joke.
but once the joke ran its course, I didn't need it anymore, sort of thing. Like once they did the reveal that the guy's like, of course this is bullshit. I know what fucking Star Wars is, but nobody wants me to know what Star Wars is. Like at that point, I'm like, okay, like the joke is it's there's the punchline. We don't need.
And the critic eventually breaks and says this movie's all bullshit.
Yeah. So, I mean, at that point, I didn't think the visuals were 100% necessary anyway. So, like I said, once they got into their narrative, the visuals took away from the experience for me.
Thinking from a financial point of view, though, if his original idea, or was it a she? I'm sorry, anyway.
I think it's a he. It's a Johannes something.
Let me see if I can do it. It's Johannes Grensfortner. It's he's definitely Austrian, I believe. Yes.
Maybe German.
Yeah, he was described as an enfant terrible, which
is like Gaspar Noé.
Yeah.
Also gets that description a lot, who I also love, and I bet Casey hates.
I've never seen a Gaspar Noé movie.
Really?
What the actual fuck?
Didn't he do that one where it's like told in reverse and it's like the rape story?
Irreversible, yeah.
Yeah.
That they just re-released, or they are re-releasing because it's filmed in reverse, and now they're going to release it.
I'm very intrigued by
narrative.
I'm very intrigued by Climax.
Climax is that's a different show, and we should probably do a Gaspar show at one point if I can convince Casey to do it. But that's gonna be a rough one.
Well, I think I just nominated myself as that guest.
Yeah, I mean, we'll accept nominations, but it has to go through our really thorough vetting process, and there's a lot of viable candidates. So we'll definitely keep your application on file and then get back to you in the near future.
Thank you.
Don't call us, we'll call you.
Our people get in touch with your people.
Where was I?
You said, you know what? I don't know. I interrupted because we went down a we did this thing that we do where we spiral
We
off
go
of. I
off-
was just telling you the name of the
off kilter.
filmmaker, and somehow I don't know where we ended up.
Well, you were describing what he was. The
Oh yeah, find out. Okay, maybe his original intention was to make a radio drama, like some kind of audio media experience, but he knew obviously, like, well, how am I going to market this? How am I going to sell this? There isn't a portal, in the horror universe for horror audio. I mean, what am I going to do? Put it on Audible? I mean, maybe I don't know how successful Audible stuff is, but anyway, I mean, maybe he decided to add the visuals to it just so he could make it a horror movie and not a horror audio drama.
Yeah.
So
comedy.
I want to say a couple things. First of all, this is a filmmaker that did Masking Threshold, and I don't know if either of you have seen it or heard of it.
No.
I know it has
But
100%
it is
on Rotten Tomatoes though, because I just
also,
saw it on
yeah,
there.
it was also a festival darling, and it's also very experimental, and it's also really fucking weird and divisive. So this is he definitely is intentionally making films like this, and that Masking Threshold also really played with the idea of sound and audio in a really interesting way. So I would encourage you to see that, at least. Jamie, I would encourage you to see it. Casey, I would encourage you to not see it.
Okay.
Masking the Threshold.
Masking Threshold.
Yeah.
Masking
no,
Threshold.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a point where, and also I was going to read just a little statement that the filmmaker gave about kind of what he was going for with this film, since we're on the subject matter. So he said, RAZZENNEST not only gave me the unique opportunity to write a love letter to genre films, and at the same time to ridicule pretentious art house films, but also to write a love letter to art house films and mock the inherent problems of genre films. It allowed me to realize my decades-old dream of making a film about the 30 Years' War and the endless atrocities without needing a budget of millions of dollars to depict the war's bloody significance. Given the political climate in the United States and other Western societies, this film is a necessary reflection on the undead legacy of murderous Christianity. So there's a lot happening in that statement. He definitely had some very clear intent, and he definitely had something to say. And I love the beginning where he's like, look, I wanted to make fun of art house films, and I wanted to celebrate art house films, and I wanted to celebrate genre films and then also make fun of genre films. And I think it's sort of a masterclass in doing a lot of things at the same time. Go ahead, Jamie.
I mean, like I like when I say I felt attacked, I mean I really did. I was sort of like, like, ow, but it was like it was amusement as well. I mean, I didn't feel insulted. I don't think he's hating on our kind of critic.
It was more like a roast.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he's an art house filmmaker. Yeah, he's an art house filmmaker making fun of art house films. Like he's in on the joke. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
which I appreciate because
yeah,
how many other art house directors would have the balls to be like, yeah, it's kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name names,
but at the same time, he's like, but by the same time, he actually like is doing what the film is sort of mocking, where he's got like something really important to say.
No, that's
and he's
totally,
doing it in this kind of fucked up way.
Totally fine. So, again, I'm going to give like a personal anecdote, I guess. If I were to ever have the money or a budget to make a movie, there's a good chance that I would make like an art house one. 100%. It wouldn't be like a stupid slasher. It would be like an intimate, deep style of film. But I also know that it's also kind of bullshit.
May I interject?
Yes.
You would make an art film because that's the only way you would have total creative freedom to do any fucked up shit you wanted. When you go inside an ABC linear storyline, no matter what kind of story you're doing, you're in a prison. But if you make an art house thing, you're like, I can do anything. And, if somebody complains, I'll say, hey, art house.
You're not wrong. You're not like, you're not like, yeah. So, and I've said this before about art house and the art house storytelling is, and that's where like the word lazy isn't probably the right word, but that's where I come in, where it's like they can't, I feel like it's a limitation on the creator, and it may or may not be, to tell a cohesive story. Like if you read, I brought this book up before, but or a quote, like Stephen King released a book, I think it was a book anyway, on how to like create a story and how to
on writing,
yeah. And I feel like for people who can't, maybe it's like ADHD brain, maybe they just can't focus on the linear aspect, and I feel like it's a limitation for them. So they go and be like, it's different, it's art house because it's not that. But really they're saying I can't tell a cohesive story, so I'm gonna do a lot of interpretive shit. So I can get away with a bunch of stuff.
But you
that
see that as shit. And I
say shit as like stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Like,
well, you see that.
It's just a fill-in word. I don't mean it's actual shit.
Well, yeah.
But
I'm just using the one. But
yeah. So
yet I see that as something that makes a movie more creative and more interesting.
Which is again like that's it's all opinion based. But I see it from like I said, from my perspective. If I were to do that, I'd be like, it would be easier for me to make something that is kind of like doesn't make fucking sense than it does to be like, okay, I need to hit these notes. These are the things I need to do. These are what makes a good story and completes a story as a whole.
Both styles, I mean, have merit. Absolutely.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I mean, as far as creative freedom, art house movies are where it's at.
Well, and I will say this, I think there's plenty of both happening. Like, I think just because you're taking creative freedom doesn't mean you're doing anything special. I mean, just saying I'm creative doesn't mean you're like good at being creative or that you're bringing anything compelling to the table.
I don't think creative applies to. I don't think good applies to creative, because creative is just creative. You can say I enjoyed it or I didn't like it, but I don't know.
I also think you can do both. I think you can do the art housey stuff without having to rely on a lot of. There's some, I forget what one we were watching recently, but where it's like a Deus Ex Machina, like the writer didn't know how to end it, so it's like fucking aliens or something like that. Like it's just that's how it's all explained, because they didn't know how to like bring it all together in the end, so they just do this one miraculous fucking thing where it's like, okay, this is what was going on behind the scenes the whole time. I find that to be like very annoying. Whereas a movie like one of the only, I guess I don't know what's classified as art house, but one of the only ones I really liked was Antlers, where I'm like, this is a full complete story.
I never saw it,
but it still has that feel of like art housiness to it. And
Casey, what do you think about? What do you think about a film like SKINAMARINK, not to go backwards, but where it ends in a very nebulous sort of almost anti-ending, where it just sort of ends, but there's no real conclusion? Do you prefer that to a movie like you just talked about, where it's like fucking aliens and they try to wrap it up in a nice little bow? Or do you think both are just terribly problematic and you hate both styles?
It's hard to say. I find I don't mind endings that leave things up to interpretation. Kind of like Saint Maud, where she like lights herself on fire at the end, but
I don't want to hear.
Oh shit.
Well, whatever. So like the ending of that movie where it's like they just added one scene, we're like, oh okay. Whereas if they ended it a second earlier, like that's stupid. That's okay. Where it's like a little bit of interpretation, but it still completes the thought process. Whereas something like SKINAMARINK, it didn't have a plot to begin with.
Yeah.
So it's hard to either fault or praise it for the ending that it had. And even going back to like RAZZENNEST, it's one of those things where it does kind of wrap up, but it's never really explained what happened, so to speak, or why it happened. And that's okay in a sense, but it's also a little frustrating. Like sometimes I'll watch some of these movies with my wife, and if it ends on a note that she's not happy with, the whole movie is fucking over. Like she hates it. Like she could be like, this is the greatest thing, and then it ends on like a note where it doesn't explain everything wrapped up in a nice bow. She's like, that was the worst movie I've ever seen. So I see both merits to it. At the same time, it needs, as long as it's not out of place, is I guess what I'm trying to say. If it's like telling a complete story, but the writer or director doesn't know how to bring it all together, then it's where I would throw in the word lazy or incomplete in my mind.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
We're both
I'm
like,
not ar-
okay.
Yeah. See, I think that's what ruined Prometheus on a lot of people because of that. I don't know the facts. The alien. I don't want to spoiler alert again.
Oh, that movie's like 15 years old. It's fine.
Well, still, an alien pops up at the end, and it seems so tacked on. And I hated it first time I saw it. I was like, this is just terrible. But I bought the disc, like a 3-disc set, because a lot of people said, okay, you hated it in the movie theaters, buy the 3-disc set, so that way you'll be able to whatever. Anyway, I love it now. It's fantastic, and it is a terrible ending, but that doesn't ruin a terrible 30-second ending. Doesn't end a 2.5 hour, splendid, deep, beautiful sci-fi horror epic. A beautiful movie. I love Prometheus.
The problem with a bad ending is most people remember the last thing they saw.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So that's the last impression that they got on the movie. So therefore, overall, it wasn't good. It's hard to, and I get that. Sometimes it's hard to look back at the rest of the story and be like, it was good. It just failed at the end. Whereas people go, failed at the end, therefore it failed overall.
The ending of Terrifier 2. Once again, I love the movie.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay. Well, do you want me to spoil the ending?
Yeah, I don't fucking care.
Okay.
No, don't spoil the ending of Terrifier 2. It's too new, and we're not talking about it on the show. So.
Oh, okay. Well,
fair
Stephanie,
enough.
you know the ending of Terrifier 2. I
do.
Okay, yeah. I kind of thought that the ending, I mean, even though the whole movie's sort of like over the top, crazy, I thought the ending sort of pushed it in kind of a what the fuck, like, okay, now you're asking to defy the laws of physics and nature.
Doesn't the ending of the first one, like, doesn't, what's his face, Art get shot like 15 times at the end of the first one?
I think.
And he, like, Michael Myers himself back?
Yeah, it's not
Yeah, but
necessarily a
that's-
spoiler to say that, like,
Yeah.
Terrifier 2 takes it into a supernatural realm.
Yeah.
That most slasher franchises do because of the fact that they need to keep bringing back their villain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, yeah. It's not that much of a... I mean, it definitely takes it in a different direction and makes it a different kind of film, but I think most of us slasher fans are pretty used to that phenomenon.
If you're watching it, if it's the first time you're watching Terrifier 2, the way it starts, it's seamless. I mean, it looks like it's the same movie, just the continuation of the same movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it works.
we
when he
should
comes back to
talk
life,
about
it works.
Terrifier 2 on this podcast, Casey. We should,
Yeah.
because I know you're a slasher guy, and there's a lot to talk about there. So
Yeah, we can do it whenever
Oh,
it
fuck yeah.
is available.
it's available now, right? I don't know about Canada, but for us,
Well, is
it
it like available on streaming?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I'll try to look it up and see where it's at.
Yeah, that would be a fun one. See, this is what we mean, Jamie. We always derail.
Yeah,
Start
especially near
talking
the
about
end.
a couple of films, and then suddenly we're talking about anything but the films we're supposed to be talking about.
Yeah.
But
But
that's good.
I do think
See,
it is good, and I
tell
think
you,
this was a
Steph, it
great
was good.
conversation. No, it's good. I didn't say it wasn't good. I was just trying to ease his concerns that he felt like he wasn't on topic enough, and there's no such thing on the show, really.
You're the one who brought it up, but hey, it's okay.
All right. Well, anyway,
Now we're really straying off the.
yeah, it's
Okay.
okay. Well, I guess then this feels like a natural sort of wrapping point, unless anyone has anything else they want to say about either film before we come to our natural conclusion.
No, I think you think I'm good.
Jamie's our guest. Do you have anything you want to say? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I recommend both, simply to experience them. I mean, if you're just a popcorn muncher, and once again, there's merit to that. That's cool. So am I. Stay away from these because they're not definitively entertaining, easy to watch, satisfying. They're just fun to experience if you have an open mind.
What a review, Jamie. You're like, if you like, if you're somebody who likes things that are entertaining and good and, compelling and, narrative and stuff, then stay the fuck away from these films. But if not.
Am I wrong? Am I wrong?
No.
You're not wrong, but it's just like, I can see like most people going like, well, that is just not a very review for these films.
I'm appealing to the type of audience who would like these movies, and that's people who consider films experiences, experiments. You know, let me see the 90 minutes that this particular person put together and why everybody thinks it's so fucking crazy. You know? That's why I think RAZZENNEST.
You
That's
have
why
to say it with the accent or it doesn't come out. Yeah.
That's true. It really doesn't. That's why I think that's going to do really well in the festivals, because it's going to get word of mouth about what it is. And people like us are going to get tricked, and they're going to be like, oh, I see what's going on. And they're going to be amused by it. And they're going to want to, they'll be along for the ride. And then when the zombie shit starts, they'll be like, oh my God, what's going on? I have to see this. I think it was wise for them to make a short movie. But yeah.
Yeah, I would argue that RAZZENNEST, unlike SKINAMARINK, is actually like a lot of fun.
Yes.
I mean, it's definitely experimental and it's definitely out there and weird, but I think it is pretty entertaining. Whereas SKINAMARINK is much more like, it's a tough watch because it's so just dreary and, it is intentionally long and repetitive and all those things because it's trying to create that atmosphere. So it's a harder watch.
Some people don't like feeling when they watch movies.
That's Casey, yeah. Fuck feelings.
I like feeling entertained.
Well, I like that too. I'm sure Stephanie likes that too. We wouldn't base our entire lives around movies, but
I like to suffer.
Yeah, I was going to say, Stephanie
Yeah.
kind of hits me as a bit of a masochist.
I'm a bit of a
there.
masochist.
Yeah.
That is true.
I mean,
like
the first
to be
time
abused.
the first time I saw Martyrs, I had an anxiety attack. I was sick. I was sick to my
Fucking
stomach.
Martyrs. Oh my God.
And most people would be like, oh, who wants? I mean, what other movie out there does the director introduce the movie himself with an apology? I'm
I
sorry,
know.
this movie is so fucked up.
That's how Repo should have started.
Shut the fuck up, Casey.
He's
God
like,
damn it.
I'm sorry, this is so fucked up. I was very depressed when I made it. Here it is.
Martyrs is that's one of the films like I love to recommend, but only with like tons and tons of caveats. Because it's one of the few films that like it really like it's a gut punch and it stays with you. But it's definitely not fun to watch.
I'm impressed. It impressed me because a movie, made me feel such a solid emotion and a solid feeling of discomfort. There was a time when I saw Rob Zombie's Halloween. I've seen it a billion times, but there was one time I saw it. I was sick, so that probably had an effect as well. But I had an anxiety attack because the movie is so negative and mean, and it's also fast paced. You can tell it was made by a musician because of the pacing and how fast paced it is. But it just, it didn't make me. I still love it. I still like it, but that particular viewing just made me feel awful. I had to take a shot or two of brandy afterwards to sort of, okay. And I loved it. That was like my most enjoyable watch because I love being physically moved by, something on a screen or something on earphones or something. I'm taking over this fucking thing. I'm sorry. I
was going to say, well, if you're interested in our opinions on Halloween, we did an episode on the Rob Zombie Halloween back, I don't know,
Jamie,
like 2 years ago.
It's a little concerning that you're coming on as a guest and you haven't listened to any of our episodes. I'm taking this a little bit personally, just FYI.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have to do some homework before the next guest appearance.
Yeah. Speaking of homework, Jamie, you said you had something you wanted to plug at the start of this. So what is that?
God,
We're gonna allow. We'll give you the once.
You're
one time.
vetoing my.
I'm vetoing
denial.
it. I am.
God damn it!
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, it is a D10 universal system. It works with any type of gameplay and setting. There's a very fast learning curve to understand the system. There's a vast universe driven by the imagination of the players. There's an unlimited variety of characters. There's no character classes, races, or levels. Everything is boiled down to one simple calculation. Kickstarter, preparing to launch, a GoFundMe is already available. Created by Mike Smith, who has 30 plus years of playtesting this particular game, he's been imagining this his like whole life. This is his dream. He's like D&D of the he's like the dungeon master of the dungeon masters. And it is a TTRPG for everyone.
And what's it called? Is there a name?
You have to ask me complicated questions. The name of it is D10.
Okay. So translation of that is it's a tabletop RPG.
Yes.
That's what TTRPG stands for.
Yes.
D10, I'm assuming, is the dice mechanics used for
yes.
the
He's
game
going to
as
use
well.
a simple one dice 10-sider.
Mm-hmm.
That's the system, I guess. Everybody creates their own characters. They do what they want for their characters. See, I don't know if they usually do this, but this sounds really fucking cool to me. You can't recreate your character, whatever. Give them a history, any kind of history. It's like the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
My character isn't even real. It's a cloud of smoke. You know.
Cool.
So yeah. So I mean, anything your imagination can do. And he's the dungeon master, and I'm going to be creating NPRs. Or wait,
NPCs.
Not NPR. That's something
Jesus
different.
Christ.
Nonprofit radio.
Yeah. NPCs. I'm going to create those, and I'm going to put together some situations and some storylines. You're going to have when you donate, you're going to be able to join a membership where you get monthly books. There's going to be a promotional tie-in with Little Caesar's Pizza.
Oh, shit.
Where if you join the membership or something, you get a Little Caesar's Pizza kit that gets mailed to your house, and you can use the ingredients and make your own Little Caesar's Pizza. This is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Christ on a cracker.
He's got sponsorships already. That's kind of cool. Speaking of that, I think we're gonna wrap her up here. It's been an hour and 20 minutes. Longer than that. It's been 119 minutes. But with all that wonderfulness said, until next time, say bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.